Hello everyone, welcome to the second installment of the St. Martin's School vlogcast. So in this vlogcast series, we discuss what we here at St. Martin's School do in order to grow our young students into the well-rounded individuals that they become when they leave the school in matric. So this afternoon, I'm joined by Mrs. Kamla Pillay, who is one of our maths teachers in the prep school, Mr. Blessing Sotuku, who is an accounting teacher, but also the high school head of academics, and Mrs. Jenny Trollope, who is the head of the foundation phase. So the topic today revolves around failure and the importance of teaching students that it is okay to fail. Some of the things that we'll be discussing is students' pressure to perform in a number of different subjects with a particular focus on maths, but also to give students and parents tools to learn to deal with failure and how to make failure healthy. So I think let's just jump right into the conversation and ask the first question of why is it important for our students to learn about failure?
So with my subject, maths, I think there's a lot of emphasis on performance. And most of the parents do put pressure because maths, English, Afrikaans, those are the three subjects that are given the most importance. Although it should not always be like that. It depends on what the child wants to study further. Some children don't even require maths going further into tertiary education. Yeah. But the emphasis that's put on a child and the pressure that's put on a child is enormous. And children are so terrified to disappoint and to fail, in a word as that, that they're always concerned about, is it an assessment? Am I taking a mark for this? Is my mom going to find out about this? So in my classroom, I encourage mistakes because for me, when a child makes a mistake, it's a stepping stone to actually success.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because they are able to see where they're going wrong. And there is no actual right and wrong. What I see as right, you may see as wrong. It's different. Children see things differently. And, we all have to realize that we're not perfect. We don't live in a perfect world. Therefore, we have problem solving in maths because everything is a problem and we have to work around things. And I also teach a lot that if there's a problem, there's no one specific way to answer that problem. There's different ways to look at it depending on how the child sees the problem. So mistakes for me and my kids know that at school, that when we make a mistake, we are learning, So they are not scared to make mistakes. They're not scared to put up their hands and ask questions because they don't feel silly about it, So
mistakes are a part of the learning journey,
It is definitely a part
because
of it.
everyone makes mistakes.
Yes.
I don't think there's anyone in life, even as adults, where you are perfect. As you've said, everyone's going to make mistakes. And so that's an integral part of the learning journey. Jenny, do you want to add anything to that?
I think in the grade 1 class specifically, we create an environment that is secure for the children. They are allowed to make mistakes. They're not punished for it. They're not ridiculed for it. And we work very hard to encourage that kind of behavior in the class. If your friend makes a mistake, there's no giggling. There's no mocking. There's no silliness. There's no sniggering. We all make mistakes. So we encourage, what do you know of the problem? What can you do? How can we help you? That's the approach we go towards. And then what I also encourage in the class is if there is a problem and you don't know how to solve it, what could we do? Let's ask a friend. Let's ask the teacher. And I don't want children to be scared of asking me for help. I always say, thank you for asking me. I'm here to help. I'm happy to help. Thank you for asking your friend. They're happy to help. And it gives the children such a sense of security that they are not scared to try. And that's where we want to come. That's our goal. And I think we do our children a disservice by taking away, making the path so easy for them, making sure that there's no room for failure. They need to fail. They need to know that it's difficult. I need to learn new things. I'm good at this. I'm not good at that. And I can overcome it. And I can survive failure from a young age. Because I see a lot of our parents today want to make everything easy for the children and don't want their children to ever fail or feel uncomfortable. So it's perfect to do it in a grade 1 setting. We don't want to start problem-solving skills when you're in high school. It's too late. You don't even know where to start.
So I think you've touched on something there about building resilience in students and the importance of that. Does anyone want to comment on the importance of building resilience in young children and in teens and why that's important in life?
So I find a lot of the children now give up easily. They're not able to they always want you to give them the answer. And especially in maths, if I give a challenge to them, instead of actually looking for answers to the challenge, they will give up very easily. And in my classroom, I also teach that grit. So unfortunately, I'm not going to just give the answer because that's not actually teaching anything. So they have to really be driven to go and get that answer and be challenged, you know. So I even reward a merit if the answer comes from them or they find a way to do it. And a lot of them respond differently. So you can see clearly the children that come home, you know, from home where parents have taught them how to actually handle a mistake or you're not always perfect. And then you do get those children that react very badly. Like you will get a tantrum, you know, because I can't get this and I'm not able to get it. So let me just have a tantrum. You know, that's my way of overcoming something like this. So I think nowadays there are a lot of children that need to be taught that it's okay. It's okay to fight for something, to make a mistake. Because in our life, when we get out there after school, we are going to come across situations where we're going to be tested on resilience and grit. And how far are we going to persevere to get what we want, you know? And those are life skills. And the way we react as well, I noticed with my children at school, like they wouldn't be calmly responding to something like this. If there's something that they make a mistake with or they're upset with, they're not calm about it at all. You know, they act out. And I can see that there is obviously coming from something that should be taught from a very young age.
So what do you do, Kamla, in a situation where that happens? Because, you know, we understand that some parents, as Jenny has alluded to, do want to create an easy environment, and to an extent we can understand why they want to do that. So then they arrive in your maths class in grade 7 and they act out in that way. What are steps that you take to then reteach the appropriate behavior?
So we breathe, we take a breath, we take actually before every maths lesson, I do a breathing with the children where we just come in, we settle because they are coming from other lessons and they're obviously carrying things from other lessons, you know, so they're not always calm. And in order for them to be taught and for me to help them, I need calm children. So we sit down, we put our bags down, and we actually do breathing for a few seconds. We actually breathe in and out, and sometimes we even joke about it because I say to them, you know, some people pay a lot of money at therapy for this, you know, for actually breathing. For free. And, you know, we're going to do this, and they do know this. So a lot of my children at school, when they are faced with something difficult, they automatically go into that.
Nice.
Because they already know that this is going to calm them. You know, so sometimes I even allow them to go onto the trampoline, where we jump. You know, like in the middle of maths, if I find I can see that they are not coping, they are struggling a little bit, so we stop, we take a deep breath, and then we go onto the trampoline for a few seconds, so that they are actually calmer and they're released. And when they get back, I notice that they are so much easier to get back into it because they've had that release. You know,
great. Sure.
So
Blessing, I think what happens is somewhere between grade 7 and grade 8, there's a disconnect between some of the skills that are taught in prep school and going to high school. And I think we as high school educators experience a new type of performance anxiety and pressure. And I think it's got to do with, you know, the matric results, and we've got to do perfect. And hear all these scary stories about students not making it into universities because they haven't performed as well. Yes, they've got the bachelor degree pass and, they've done all of those things, but they haven't performed as well. And I think that's where that performance anxiety comes from. But how do we combat that in high school students?
Well, I must say, life is really a journey from the prep school and primary school, getting to high school, and then suddenly you have this new human being, a teenager. And that comes with a lot of, psychological pressure around how they deal with the new environment they can't suddenly find themselves in. You can put it down to them being more, conscious to the world around them. And now in this world, failure is not really something that is easily, adaptable to, because it's immediately picked on. I feel that our teenagers are in a world where they have to balance a lot of, emotions, and one emotion that comes with failure, I'm not sure how that really can be, harnessed. It's so open. A small failure for a teenager is so open, and everyone is going to judge. And I think to a certain extent, the effect of media, social media, the time they spend on social media has, put them in a very difficult situation in terms of dealing with failure, because that slight mistake on social media is picked on. That slight, issue with a picture you post on social media is picked on. So we kind of sense a certain level of non-acceptance of failure, to actually understand that because life is a journey full of failures and successes, it is simply part of something that they have to go through and overcome. So in high school, we must, I must say, we really trying to deal with these issues from Form 1 to Form 5, varying issues, varying backgrounds, and we try and make it very acceptable to say, when we fail, that's actually part of learning. One of my favorite quotations is actually from one of my, idols, someone I really, growing up, respected. I played basketball in high school and in college, Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan says, I can take failure, but I cannot take not trying.
Sure.
So this is what we really trying to get our teenagers or young adults in St. Martin's to say, try. And trying comes with getting it or not getting it. And that's all acceptable. Because the aim, goal of us as a school is to produce that learner, that student that will go out into the world and face what the world has for us. The world is not full of, made up of, smooth paths and, flowery, environments. The world is made of thorns and roses, and that's what makes the world beautiful, how you manage, all such dynamics.
So I think one of the things that you touched on there, and you did, Kamla, as well, was the fact that it's about learning to not give up, that things are going to be tough, and actually the way that we learn is through things being difficult, so that our brains grow and they develop so to take on that new information. And they've got to understand that. And I think your point about social media is so true in that, we see success. And that's all that is on social media, right? And we think it's overnight success, that these people are just famous. Our boys look at these soccer players and think that they are great and they idolize them, but they don't see the work that goes in behind the scenes. And so I think it's important that we create a culture where we see failure. And so, Jenny, wouldn't you think it's important that we, in some ways or another, show our children what failure looks like?
Yes, absolutely. And the reverse is showing the children their strengths. So not everybody is a disaster and a failure. You have strengths, and you need to use those strengths to overcome the obstacle, to overcome the failure. And I think that's what we do in grade 1. We show them that grade 1s can do hard things. Just because you're a little person doesn't mean you can't do things. You can do things. And when we're learning to read and to start the basic maths, you have to do things again and again and again in different ways to be able to grasp the concept. And I think that's where that metacognition is so important, when children think about their thinking and think about their learning. How do I learn? I'm a learner that needs to see pictures. I'm a learner that needs to move. I'm a learner that needs to write things. And as on that journey, the teacher and the pupil know the strengths, and we use those strengths to overcome the failure.
So I think that knowing the strengths is an important thing. And I think that's the benefit of us being in a smaller environment, is that each student rather, gets to have someone get to know them and work on their strengths. And that's important. Blessing, do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yes. So I think we have placed so much emphasis on marks, right? You have to get this mark, then that's success. You get this mark, then that's failure. So to build into that, what we've looked at in the high school and actually made it a point that we do as a school is to recognize effort. So we have to commend those students that, yes, they're not getting that mark that the world says that's the mark everyone should be getting, but are they putting in the required or expected effort into their work? Are they engaging in what we as a school is obviously offering? For us, that is more important. That engagement, that resilience, that drive, that is what we really comment. And I must say, we have created a niche as St. Martin's, I must say, for young people that feel that there's nothing that is worth commending in what they do. As a school, we recognize those efforts, and in that we build and we see the results. Young people that put everything into something that's put in their path, and young adults that determined to show their strengths.
Great. So how do we strike the balance then? Because I think, a lot of people maybe hearing that comment goes, oh, you award everything then, right? You're not just awarding the winners, you're awarding everyone and everyone gets a certificate, and that's not building skills either, because then it sounds like we're not making failure okay, because we're rewarding it. So how do we get that right? How do we combat that?
Yes, I think what we are saying is, we're not saying that we celebrate or we do not recognize failure. It happens, but what we're saying is this should be an opportunity to learn from. It shouldn't be we have failed, then you just go about. It's very important to learn from mistakes. It's very important to learn from failures, and then from there you turn to the other side. And not every child is going to get a certificate. That we must make very clear, and then obviously it's different, areas of school life where we have different levels of participation, and we offer, as a school, holistic opportunities for our children to, show their strengths. But in any area that they're failing, what we then do as a school, we support and we make sure that they understand it's part of a journey. They can learn from that, and they get to, even draw more strength from that, going forward. Then what happens, what it does, then it will obviously help them to have confidence, not only in academics and not only maybe in sports, but in, other areas of their school life. Yes.
And I just want to say, for children who are not making any sort of progress academically, our teachers provide support lessons for them in small groups and one-on-one. So your child is not left to flail around, and we are there to do the work with them. And I think that is very important, and it's one of our strengths. That we there, and if some of the children don't want to work in a smaller group, then the teacher will make time to work with that child one-on-one, so they don't feel embarrassed, but they're getting the support they need.
And I suppose that's another benefit of the nurturing and small environments is that notion of early detection.
Yes.
That when there's an issue that arises, whether it is as young as grade 1, or we even see it in the high school when they reach Form 1 and there are certain barriers to learning, we're able to detect that quite early and put interventions in place, either formally or informally, to aid the students to do well.
Yes.
I think what we're saying is that failure and resilience and grits are skills, and they're skills that can be learnt, right? It's not that we either have it or we don't. And I suppose that's a part of your growth mindset as well, is that we learn from these sorts of things. Kamla, you touched earlier a little bit on some practical ways to teach that and to provide coping mechanisms for students to work through some of these things. Are there any other practical pieces of advice that we can give to parents that they can try at home with their students, to the students themselves, in terms of this is how you cope when you're facing the anxiety of potentially failing?
So I think the number one thing is that parents need to allow them to fail. And I'm finding that it's not always like that. You know, like they would rather do it for them or help them 90% of it so that they don't actually fail. Whereas I honestly think it's such an important thing to fail. Because in order for them to come back and even learn any coping mechanism, they have to fail. You know, so a lot of them are cushioned. You know, they held together, but it's not going to be like that when they get out there. So they have to take that step of making that mistake. And parents should encourage them that it's okay to make a mistake, you know, or talk about instances where they were also making mistakes and they were not always, none of us are perfect. But sometimes they feel they have to put on this perfect persona, you know, for their parents because they're going to be upset with them or for whatever reason. But when you share your experience of failing, like I always share my experience as a math student, you know, with my class, because I want them to see that I was really not good at maths. You know, I was really, my teacher didn't think I was good at maths, you know, and I only share this because I need for them to know that I became a maths teacher even though my teacher didn't think I was actually good at maths.
Sure.
And at that point, I thought I was a failure at maths, but it made me work harder to prove to myself that I actually could do this, you know? And the reason I became a maths teacher is so that I could actually encourage other children who are struggling with maths, because I know maths is something that people have a real block to. You know, you're either good at it or you're not, which is not true really, because everything around us is maths. So there's no way that we're bad at maths. You know, we all have strengths in maths. And it just makes me realize, like I share those experiences with my class. I share it with them and I say to them, you know, I really wasn't good at maths. But if I could do it and teach you this, surely you all can overcome this as well. So parents also need to share their own experiences of, I really couldn't tie my shoelaces when I was at this age, but I persevered and I tried harder, so that they can also recognize their parents as normal human beings that made mistakes.
Absolutely.
You know, because we don't want to portray this, that we are all perfect. And then they feel like they're always going to disappoint.
Absolutely.
You know, and no child wants to disappoint an adult.
No. Any other practical?
Yes. So in high school, I must say, we just take it almost like a gear up in terms of, practically supporting the student, not necessarily mates, but, you know, across the board. The first thing that we try keep, you know, on top of is identifying as early as possible, you know, areas in which the individuals could be struggling in. That's in Form 1 and Form 2. That's very important because the range of subjects we offer kind of place, you know, our students in various scenarios or atmospheres where they experience different and pressures, so to speak. Then we guide them as they go into Form 3 through workshopping, through external professionals that come in and talk around areas that they can actually focus on in terms of subject selection, which is very important. Now, talking about maths as well, that is a very critical point in high school at that point, because now there's a separation, maths and maths lit. We really try and guide our students at that stage as to what would best suit them career-wise and what also best suit them, their personal interests and strengths. And then that is where we actually also then have a situation where we also have to educate, so to speak, or to inform parents, what that basically entails. Because out there, people have different perspectives and views, and some of them are not, quite correct. And from that stage into matric, we also support our students a lot with guidance around examinations or formal assessments, because we have noted that that is an area of much anxiety. And that is also an area of judgment. 2 exams in a year, we judge them according to that. But is this really what we want to achieve, or what we want them to achieve out of their day-to-day academic work? Are we just looking at 2 assessments in a year? But then that's how this impact on the overall performance or overall marks of the students. So what we then do in the high school is we do a lot of workshopping around approach to formal assessments, study skills, exam room etiquette or technique. When you're in the exam room, really, that's a pressure-filled environment. How do you cope with that? All this we try and do so that we mitigate against, the effect of, these pressures that will result in our children maybe failing. And what's very interesting is sometimes when you look at this exam mark and you compare it to other forms of assessments and, tasks that this child could have been afforded, you really see a distinction. When they are comfortable, when they are not being judged, when there's not that pressure, they normally perform more. But then suddenly there's an hour of pressure, they get off the rails. How then do we deal with that? So we're actively engaging internally, and also we're inviting external professionals to help our teenagers cope with that kind of pressure.
Jenny, from a younger point of view or perspective, any tips for that age group?
I think we have to have open communication with the parent. So we would contact a parent and say, your child is battling with addition. We are working on it. We're working one-on-one. I want you to use apparatus at home, go back to the basics and start up. So there is a thorough foundation. So we've got no gaps. Because I think sometimes, in previous years, or if they've been at previous schools, there are gaps that haven't been filled. And then the child ends up with a deficit in their knowledge. So we have to teach the parents it's fine to use counters until they don't need them. It's fine to use apparatus until they understand the concept, for example, of fractions. So cut up the paper plate. Don't expect them to know what a half is if they haven't seen it before or they're not familiar with it. Let them do the practical thing first, because they must use the practical things at home. And they create a fun environment. Work with your child and support them. And, celebrate all the little wins along the way. So we do inform the parent, we inform the child, we're working on it. So it's not a secret. It's not a point of stress for the child. They understand they haven't got the concept yet. They will get it. We're working on it. They are supported. So that's what I like to tell the parents, because else parents, straight away start blaming the child, blaming the teacher, blaming themselves. So if we work together, we can overcome it usually.
So I think from all 3 of you, it's been about taking the fear out of learning, taking the fear out of failing, and saying these things are okay, and making it more comfortable, because once you've got over that, then you'll understand that I'm going to fail, I'm not going to get it right, but that's okay. I think it was, and I might fail at this quote now, Edison, who said, something along the lines of, before I invented the light bulb, I discovered over 1,000 times of how not to invent the light bulb, right? And if he had given up, we wouldn't have been sitting here with electricity and an aircon and all of those sorts of things. But because he's learned that actually failure is very, very much a part of the process, it's okay for me to fail because I will get it right eventually. I think one last thing to just discuss, Jenny, you mentioned it, and Blessing, in your discussion around subject choices, you mentioned it as well. It's about also playing to a child's strengths and developing that. So finding out a child's strengths, what they're good at, what they enjoy doing, and then harnessing that through their learning, by discovering their learning styles, seeing how they do things, but then also in making sound choices. Because I think it's important, especially when we're getting to the Form 3 year and it's time for those critical subject choices for universities. We find a lot of parents who have this stigma around, my child must take maths and I must take science. And yes, it's important for your child to give it a go, to try, to do these things. But at the end of the day, there are some students who might not have the aptitude or the skill set for those subjects, and then we're forcing them into doing those subjects, and then in our own way setting them up for failure. And I think in those terms, that sort of failure is different from learning to fail. And I think we need to appeal to our parents probably to be thinking carefully about that. In terms of that, I think can become quite demeaning. It can become quite debilitating. It creates even more anxiety around things because now I'm going to the maths tutors and I'm doing Kumon and I've got the extra lessons and I'm spending so much time focusing on this subject that I'm actually dropping my other subjects and I'm sucking the joy out of learning. And so I think it's important to strike that balance.
Yes, I must say that there's quite a frustrating, situation in high school where we have actually identified as a teacher that probably the strengths of this individual lie here, and then there's that pressure now for this child to actually be in a subject area where not that we know, but we've identified, challenges that can actually come up. And then this child is there, they're frustrated. We are teachers, we're frustrated. And then how do we get this message across to the parent to say, we think, not necessarily that we think, but we wouldn't say we experts in this place, but we have a degree of, of knowledge when we identify some, such challenges. Then we advise. And I think this is the message maybe we need to have into our community to say, we are a partnership. So our view, probably as educators, as teachers, counts for something when we advise that maybe this is the area that a particular individual needs to be in. However, we, especially moving from Form 2 into Form 3, where they do subject selection, we really encourage our students to, I usually use the statement, go for it. Go for what really is on your heart. If you think or you feel this is a career you want to go for and these are the subjects that you need, go for it. What we do then as a school is we then check the progress of the child in the early terms or the early stages of their Form 3 journey. And then we get to a point where I actually sit and advise parents, usually when we meet at consultation meetings, and we say, no, we feel the child has to change direction. At that point, it's very critical that we have that, communication and also that understanding to say, listen, we have allowed the child to actually go for their dream, but it might not actually be what's good for them. And that's another thing that we do as a school to allow. We clearly see that it might not work, but we allow our students that opportunity to go down that path. But then we get to a certain point, we then say, probably, based on what we've observed, it would be, ideal and beneficial to change course. before it's too late. And sometimes that takes us to even matric, when they're still not understanding or take up the advice by parents who say, I think this is the right course. And then that is quite frustrating, I must say, for both the child and also for us as teachers.
So I think both of you have, in our discussions, picked up on something that's quite key, and that is open communication. And I think what we understand here at St. Martin's is it's a triangle, right? You've got students, you've got parents, you've got teacher, and in order to have our students succeed, we try and make the sides of that, listen to me doing maths, make the sides of that triangle smaller to bring everything together. And once we do that through formal communication, like the reports that I know the prep school does twice a year, the high school does 3 times a year, and through informal communication, which is a matter of sending an email or picking up a phone and just saying, hey, we are detecting this. We're seeing that this is an issue. And it starts from even before the foundation phase in the pre-prep in grade 000, and it goes all the way up into matric, where partnership is absolutely pivotal in the success of our students. And I think we as a school really manage that and try our hardest. Look, we don't always get it right, and sometimes it's difficult, but we really try to make sure that those channels of communication are clear and that we're all on the journey of getting a child through the school and getting them through the school well.
Yes.
Yeah. Right, I think that probably sums up a lot of what we want to say. I just want to see if there's any closing comments or thoughts from anyone in terms of this topic.
I just feel that in society, as adults, we are very judgmental. And that is why children have this fear and anxiety of making mistakes and going forward and doing what they feel, they want to. And I just feel as if we had to judge a fish by the way it climbed a tree, it would fail hopelessly. So every child is an individual and should be looked upon as that. So in our school, we thrive on that, where every child, we look at their strengths and what we can support their weaknesses with and get them through in that way.
Perfect, thank you. Blessing, anything from you?
I must say our school is a safe place to make mistakes for our children. So any child in St. Martin's must never ever feel judged, must never ever feel not being adequate, or must never ever feel that they're not being seen or supported or noticed. They must know that we're actually looking out for that child that's going to make a mistake, because we know that's a learning opportunity. And as Ms. Pillay mentioned, we've made our own share of mistakes in life. And we're going to make mistakes going forward. But that shouldn't stop us from making progress. So make mistakes, fail, be progressive. At the end, you will achieve what you set your mind to.
Great, thank you.
And I just want to encourage parents that we are here to help them as well, even on the parenting journey. If they are having struggles or challenges at home, pick up the phone the teacher. You can phone the head of department. You can email the headmaster or the headmistress and ask the questions. We're here to support you. So you're not alone. And I think that's a very strong message that I like to bring across to my parents. You're not alone on this journey. You don't have to pretend you have all the answers. We're here to support you. We're here to take your child through the journey of the school. And we're here to make their education exciting and worthwhile.
Absolutely. Kamla, Blessing, Jenny, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your expertise. I certainly learned a lot, and I hope our viewers did as well. And so we sincerely hope that you enjoyed watching this episode, and we look forward to welcoming you back to the 3rd episode in our series. Thank you.